Welcome back, Camden Catholic. Oh, it's been a while. We haven't had a flip in a long time, but glad we're doing this so we can get about a day or two ahead, right? Keep cruising, keep pushing. The way it's looking right now is your test probably isn't going to be until sometime next week, but I'll give you a heads up. You'll have plenty of time to study. If I were you, I would just start studying now a little bit of the stuff on the front end, okay? Because this goes from Reformation to exploration, and then it wraps up, all right? So let's keep going. So we stopped here with one of my classes, so I'm going to pick up right here. So if you actually got passes, you can just kind of check out. But keep in mind, with this flip, don't write anything I don't tell you. Just simply because this presentation is dummy old. I made this 6 years ago. I don't want to make a brand new one. It's got the skeleton of what I need, but I fill in the more important cool stuff along the way. All right? So anyway, so make sure you're paying attention. Don't mute me. Don't be a punk like that. Don't do the whole freeze frame, look forward, all that garbage. Just listen. But as these colonies begin to arise and as towns and cities begin to build themselves up from these colonies, some of the races are going to begin to mix together. In Spanish colonies, this was much more prominent, so much so that they actually began to give them like a social class, right? And they would call them mestizos, which is a native and a European mixed together, and then mulattoes, which is African and European descent mixed together. Now, this will be much more prevalent when we get into the Latin American liberation movements and kind of how these different classes began to get out of control, and now they're actually going to kind of centralize them in a little bit, okay? So, but let's keep going, all right? Now, then you've got North America. You got your, write this down. You've got struggles for North America. Write this down. This is important. So, your South American region, all right, is going up until your Central American, up into your Colorado, Texas, Louisiana area, all the way over to California. That's going to be Spain dominated, all right? But then we move into North America, East Coast, Canada kind of stuff, right? So, while Spanish and Portugal said it's Central America, well, Portugal just Brazil, because we talked about that, line of demarcation, Treaty of Tordesillas, you know what I mean? Like, messed it all up. But South America, other Europeans, or crap, North America, other Europeans had eyes for North America. Now, out of the big groups, you would think, well, let me think. Well, Portugal can't go over there, so who else is going to be able to strong enough to go over there? Who do you think it is? What two countries were powerful enough navally and also economically to get over there? It's not Portugal, it's not Spain, so now we've got to keep going right, okay? What about HRE? Nah, they're not organized. They're not together. They're a Holy Roman Empire, right? What about Italy? Not even a country yet. Wouldn't even give Columbus money to go, right? What about Austria? Doesn't have a freestanding navy like that. Not ready for it. Got to go through Mediterranean. Big problem, right? So the two big ones are England, France, right? So write that down. England and France, right? So we're going to talk about France first. So the idea is that they were trying to build a new France. So by the mid-1550s, the French are going to settle early on in Canada, Nova Scotia area, and they're going to occupy nearly half of North America as they work their way down the what river? Bang, the Mississippi River, right? Very good job, Kamaya. I heard you over there. So the French put their main focus in Canada, which they called New France, okay? So going forward, though, the French population grew very slowly. Very, very slowly. Didn't have a lot of very large settlements either. Mainly because their revenue source came from two particular things, furs and fishing, all right? Also, due to the fact that the French never saw a lot of growth simply because the terrain was so expansive, their area was so large, and not to mention the fact as well, because they were fur trading markets and companies that were coming in trying to scavenge all this stuff up and then ship it back over. They weren't like setting up permanent settlements along the way. So, and remember, the Mississippi River is very important. Well, really, really fast, what fur do you think they were after the most? This is going to be like a little bit of extra credit maybe on this test, right? What animal had the fur that the French wanted more than anything else? Anybody? Anybody? I heard you over there, Lucas and Chris. That is exactly right. Beavers, right? They wanted the beaver pelts. Beavers are waterproof, right? Beaver pelts were actually used to make a lot of very, very high-priced items because the Europeans had never seen them before. All right, so continuing forward, though, the French Empire is going to stretch from Canada all the way down the Mississippi into what you now consider Louisiana, right? So later on, towards the Napoleonic era, right, they're going to acquire even like Louisiana up into, what's above them? Mississippi, no, crap, Mississippi's over to the right. Oh, Missouri, okay, Missouri, Louisiana, Iowa, like expand all the way up through that Kansas, all that area, that huge swath of land that goes all the way up to Canada is going to belong to France. So they're everything pretty much west of the Mississippi, but they did start flirting around over on the east side. So they're going to expand all the way down the Mississippi, though, into Louisiana. Now, the English colonies, very, very big, important thing we understand. Theirs were more the 13 coastal colonies that we know of today. You've heard of these before. I'm going to be really... 13 of you will be able to get some extra credit tomorrow, all right? I'm going to make a list on my board, 1 through 13. The first 13 people to come in and write a like state up there, you have to ask me for a marker. I'll give 2 out at a time, okay? You got to be able to write them in order of a line. I'll give you extra credit on your test coming up next week, okay? So get here quick, all right? So the 13 English colonies, though, all right? So the first permanent colony was in Jamestown, Virginia in 1606. Now, I said permanent because in 1604, there was actually a failed colony that if somebody else comes in and tells me what colony was actually a failure in North Carolina in 1604, then I'll be very, very impressed. Because Sir Walter Raleigh, like he was there, and then he left, and came back, and they just disappeared. He didn't know where they went. So look that up and tell me where that is. But in 1607, Jamestown, Virginia is going to be set up. And the settlers would not have survived without the help of the Native Americans. They actually went through this period in 1610 called the Starving Times, where we actually know of a woman right now called Jamestown Jane. We found her remains. Well, I say that like I did. But the historical community found her remains, and they actually found out that like her skull had marks in it from like claw hammers and stuff like that, where they were peeling off of her skin and eating it. That's how bad it got. And then, of course, the Native Americans came in. I believe they're Powhatan Native Americans came in and actually showed them how to survive in this harsh environment. So, really, really quickly though, also just so you know, the colony would find its money in a particular item. But somewhere nearby this, write this down. This is phenomenally important. It's a joint stock colony, all right? A joint stock colony means that it was set up completely to make money. A joint stock colony is made completely for revenue, okay? So whenever you were in 5th grade and they were like, why did people settle the Americas? And everybody's like, oh, religious freedom. That's one reason. And it wasn't even really religious freedom. It's because nobody liked the Puritans and kicked them out. We'll get there in a second. So anyway, but the colony was found its money in one particular item. That big ticket item is going to be, what do you think it is? Joint stock colony. Yes, it's important, but it is, bang, that's right, Danessa, tobacco. All right, so tobacco is going to be the big, big market item for them, okay? So going forward, though, don't write Pilgrims. Don't write Pilgrims. What I say, don't write it, all right? So what you need to write instead is the Puritans, okay? So write the Puritans. Puritans. Puritans are a type of Calvinist, okay? To give you a heads up, they're a type of what again? Calvinist. So they're going to land in Plymouth, Massachusetts. If they're Calvinists, you already know they're no fun. But they're going to land in Plymouth, Massachusetts, okay? You know the whole story. They came from the Mayflower, blah, 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 blah. Don't write Pilgrims, write Puritans. Remember, I made this when I was teaching at a school where I did not feel like I was academically challenging them enough. So they're the Puritans. They're a type of European Calvinists. They're English Protestants looking for religious freedom. It's because they were so snotty and they thought they could come in and like just fix the Anglican Church and all this other stuff. They're very anti-Catholic, so you should be salty. All right, anyway, but continuing forward, the Puritans are going to survive with the aid of the natives as well. But also, it's because they had a strong government based off this thing called the Mayflower Compact, right? So the very first signs of English government are going to be in the New World based on this thing called the Mayflower Compact. It was an agreed upon idea of self-government of this community, okay? They also call themselves the Separatists as well, but that's not that important right now. So anyway, we were kicked out by King James. It's a whole thing. Now, anyway, so in the 1600s, the English are going to begin to set these colonies up. You got the Puritans up north in the northern colonies, the New England colonies. It's separated into 3 sections. You got your New England colonies. You should probably write this down. You got your New England colonies up in the north. That's your Puritans mostly, and also some joint stock colonies. You get your middle colonies in the middle, of course. That's usually your Quakers, as well as a lot of joint stock colonies. Then you have your southern colonies, which are almost purely joint stock colonies. Unless when you're looking at Georgia and James Oglethorpe, who started Georgia simply for prisoners, debtors, and also was the first people to accept Jewish people. Maryland was a colony actually founded for Catholics. So Mary's land, get it? All right, so anyway, so many extra credit opportunities for this test. I'm going to write all these questions down, all right? The Pilgrims survived with the aid of the natives as well, and a strong government called the Mayflower Compact. That is one you know. This is a coloring book. I hate this image. It's so ridiculous because they were actually super sexist. Look at what a scold's bridle is, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. No, anyway, let's keep going. The Mayflower Compact was an agreement, a formal agreement that was set down on how to rule the colony of Plymouth. It's the first signs of official government in the New World. All right, so very, very important stuff. Very, very cool. But they did survive with the aid of this document. So the English colonies, though, they're going to stretch from New York all the way down to Georgia. All right, some of you are like, what about Vermont and stuff? Okay, I wasn't trying to be necessarily like super minute. But yeah, technically they actually spanned from Maine all the way down to Georgia. But we don't actually consider Maine a 13th colony, but I'm going to put a star underneath this 13 colonies list. And if you can tell me that Maine was actually a part of what colony, then I'll give you extra credit for that too. What's up? All right, anyway, they would grow very, very fast. And the southern colonies would actually grow the most in terms of wealth, all right? And a lot of it actually, you know what the big crop was in South Carolina after the early colonization? Rice, right? Who saw that coming? Anyway, but it's mostly due to the humid areas. So governing the colonies is going to be massively, massively important, right? So wow. In case you didn't know, all the last stuff, you should have been writing that down, okay? So I guess this presentation wasn't as bad, but write all of this stuff down. So we're going to take a pause for a moment, and if you didn't get all that in the backtrack, you want to write it down. Don't write anything down unless I tell you don't write this down, all right? So anyway, but don't write this down. This is lame. This is important, okay? So struggles for power. So skip this. Skip this. This is basic. And then struggles for power. Very important, though. So here's the thing. This is going to be a massive, massive battle because if we really, really think about this really, really fast, let's back it up real quick. And let me show you something really, really fast. So if we add a little colonial map of North America before French and Indian War. All right. There we go. Okay, so when we're looking at these maps, right, there's going to be a massive battle. Here we go. There's going to be a massive battle between two of the larger colonial groups, right? And it's going to be particularly between, here we go, the French, and it's going to be between the English, right? Come on, why can't you just let me look at the thing? It's right there. Here we go. So, North America in 1763, as you can tell right here in this green, was controlled by Spain, right? So, and then early on, you had your British colonies here, and then you had your French claims going down through this area as well, or actually, it was just in Haiti. But in 1750, if you look before all this stuff, actually, the French had a huge amount of crossover with the British colonies, right? It's because they started all the way in Nova Scotia, came down, and then you had British claims over here in Canada, and then it was also over here on the East Coast, right? The problem with this whole thing is it's going to lead to the very, very first international war, which actually should be considered World War I. And, of course, that war is actually called the French and Indian War. This is important. You can write this down. So, Europeans are going to begin to fight each other over dwindling land resources in the New World. So they're going to dispute over future land holdings and colonies, and the French and the Indian War is going to start because France and England are going to battle for land in America, all right? So because it's that big Mississippi River debate, like in the Appalachian Mountains, who gets this? We can't settle here. There's nobody living here, but what if I'm French? I can go over there and I have a croissant, right? And then some English meat pie guy comes over on his side, and he's like, you're going to be over here. There were no definite lines, right? So it led to this huge battle called the French and Indian War. But the crazy thing is fighting is going to break out all over Europe. Because remember, we are in Africa and even in India. Because remember when we were talking about all this stuff? The Europeans are spreading out all over the place. You got the Dutch in India, and then you got the Europeans and the Portuguese, and you got the English in Africa. And then you got the Spanish over here, and then you got the Portuguese trying to settle Brazil. It's over land. It's over land holdings, right? Who's going to get it? Who's going to make this money off all this stuff? The British are going to end up taking the war, though, and they're going to end up winning. They're going to strip Canada away from the French, and the Treaty of Paris is going to end the conflict to ensure British dominance of North America, right? So the Treaty of Paris is going to end the conflict. Now, later on, Spain's going to see a huge decline. We're going to talk about that later in the next unit. And actually, France is going to usurp a lot of their territory, right? So France is going to get its claim back in that big Louisiana area because of Napoleon, mostly. All right, so anyway. But that's it. That's where we're stopping. All right, so very, very good job, CP. I know this one was a little bit longer, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, right? I thought we got some good stuff done. Remember all those extra credit opportunities, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a good evening.